The San Francisco 49ers are 5-7 after a 35-10 loss to the Buffalo Bills, and to summarize the 2024 49ers season in a couple of words, well, it has not been their year. Not at all. They opened the 2024 season with a 32-19 win over the Jets on Monday night and looked good in that game. They had over 400 yards of offense, Jordan Mason ran for over 140 yards, and they forced multiple turnovers. And sure, Christian McCaffrey, Dre Greenlaw, and Talanoa Hufanga didn't play in that game, but it was fine because they won by double digits and they were eventually going to be back and be the same old 49ers. They would eventually be the team that's been to the NFC Championship game in 4 of the past 5 years. But that never happened. They would lose the following week in Minnesota and then lose to the Rams in week 3 and were 1-2 before they knew it. They would go on to beat the Jacoby Brissett-led Patriots in week 4, then lost to the Cardinals by a single point in week 5 to fall to 2-3, and that's been the story of the 49ers season. A day late and a dollar short. Recently, it's gotten a lot worse, but the 49ers were starting to fall apart before the Packers game in week 12, in which they lost 38-10. And the 49ers have been one of the most successful franchises over the past few years, but the inevitable downfall of the San Francisco 49ers is here. And in today's video, we're going to break down how they got here, what the next steps are, and what they can realistically do moving forward. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what the main problem for the 2024 49ers is, and it's without a doubt injuries. Obviously, everyone knows about the Christian McCaffrey injury, or injuries he's dealt with in 2024, but it hasn't been just him. Not even close. Brandon Ayuk held out for a lot of the offseason looking for a new contract, and there's a reason he was looking for a new contract, and it's because the NFL doesn't just stand for the National Football League, it also stands for not for long. And Ayuk signed a 4-year, $120 million contract extension with the 49ers in August, and less than 2 months later, tore both his MCL and ACL against the Chiefs and was done for the year. The 49ers also had one of the bigger free agent signings of the 2023 offseason when they signed interior defensive lineman Javon Hargrave to a 4-year, $84 million contract. He was coming off of a 2022 season in which he had over 50 pressures with the Eagles and even had 11 sacks, and signing with the 49ers was a great move for both sides. Hargrave could play next to a Defensive Player of the Year edge in Nick Bosa and still be a disruptor along the interior, and both players would benefit. And he made the Pro Bowl last year, but in week 3 of the 2024 season, Hargrave tore his triceps and was done for the year. And pretty quickly you get the point as to how the 49ers season has progressively gotten worse. They are coming off of back-to-back 25-plus point losses, and I think the 28-point loss in Green Bay was arguably the lowest point because they were out so many guys entering that game, and the best they could do was hope to keep it close. And for reference, they were out Ayuk and Hargrave, of course, and also didn't have quarterback Brock Purdy, a Hall of Fame left tackle with Trent Williams, as well as Nick Bosa, Talanoa Hufanga, and Dre Greenlaw too. Being down a third of your starters in any game is obviously tough, and that's a tremendous understatement in itself, but the 49ers were having a down year prior to the last 2 games, and I thought 2023 was their best chance to win a Super Bowl, and they came up short. And it happens. It's part of sports. One team wins and one team loses. But the problem with the 49ers after Super Bowl 58 and entering the 2024 season was that their roster is getting old and expensive for that matter too. Trent Williams is 36 and obviously won't play forever, and he has a cap hit of $21.9 million in 2025, and this is per overthecap.com, of course. The 49ers have been in a very fortunate position over the past few years because of the selection of Brock Purdy, and by having Brock Purdy on a very cheap contract, they were able to pay players they wouldn't have been able to if Brock was already paid. So for the 2025 season, the 49ers have several cap hits north of $20 million, which includes guys like Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Javon Hargrave. And paying players is fine because at the end of the day, you have to pay for talent. You can't let a guy walk out the door because you simply don't want to pay him. At least good winning organizations don't do that. But Trent will be 37 next year, George Kittle will be 32 next year, Javon Hargrave will be 32 coming off of a season-ending injury, and while we did not mention Deebo Samuel with guys north of $20 million cap hits, he has has a cap hit of $15.9 million, so you might as well say $16 million, and he will be 29 years old at the start of the 2025 season. Trent Williams is in a very unique situation because he is Trent Williams and he is ancient for the position, so I would just say ride it out while you can with Trent and leave him there. But George Kittle and Debo, and specifically Debo, are two interesting players to watch to see what the 49ers are going to do with them, and Debo more so than George. The initial thought may be, well, Debo is a 29-year-old receiver, so what's the deal? And the thing with Debo and why this is a big deal is because Debo is not a normal 29-year-old receiver. Even back in 2021, which was Debo's best year as a pro, by far might I add, he didn't win as a receiver from a crisp route running standpoint the way you would see a guy like Justin Jefferson or even his teammate Brandon Ayuk do when healthy. Debo has always been a physical player, and in turn, that's naturally going to limit the back end of his career, especially with the carries he gets too. The 49ers can save $5 million by designating Debo as a post-June 1st cut next year, and they can save $15 million by designating George Kittle as a post-June 1st cut next year. Now, Debo is an interesting player because there's not a lot of Debos, and I would argue he is one of the more difficult players to replace in the NFL, despite him not being a top 2 or 3 player at the position. But when you factor in his age, the wear and tear on his body, and what the 49ers will want to do moving forward, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Debo Samuel is not a 49er next year. And to be completely honest, I really like the idea of the Patriots trading for Debo this offseason, assuming they take on the entirety of his contract and both sides mutually benefit. But what I think the 49ers should do and what I think they're actually going to do are two different things. And I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are going to get together in a little over a month and say, for as tough as the 2024 season was, which is about as tough as it can possibly get, we were still in contention to win the NFC West heading into December. Now, I don't think they're going to win the NFC West, and I don't know a lot of people that do at this point, but the point is, they still have a chance to win the NFC West, despite pretty much anything that could go wrong having gone wrong in 2024. And I think they're going to look themselves in the mirror and say, this roster really isn't all that different from 2023, and we actually had a really, really good draft class in 2024. So if we have those guys that we drafted in 2024 take a step in 2025, and we have players like Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey, for example, get healthy, we can run it back and we can make another run. Now, trying to run back an NFL roster 2 years later, especially in today's era, and thinking you're going to have the same results, to me is an oversimplification and also not reality as to how today's NFL works. I don't think Christian McCaffrey would have a 2,000 total yard, 21 total touchdown season in 2025 the way he did in 2023. I don't think George Kittle would go for over 1,000 yards, and there's a couple of reasons for that, not just because George Kittle will be 32 years old, and we'll get more into that in a minute, and I also don't think Brandon Ayuk would go for 1,300 yards coming off of a torn ACL. One other factor that would play into the 2025 49ers offense that I think in theory would help them is having Ricky Pearsall. Now, this also plays into why the 49ers season has been so tough and so difficult. It's not just a normal Super Bowl hangover. It's not just, all right, a couple guys got hurt and we unfortunately couldn't replicate the success we had in 2023. I'm going to get real for a minute, and Ricky Pearsall was shot before the season started, and thankfully Ricky is still with us, and that's obviously a tremendous toll on an entire team and an entire locker room right before the season started, and there's no telling how much that impacted the team. There is no measurement that you can say, well, if this didn't happen, the team would have been more locked in. There's none of that. Nobody knows anything, and that is a tremendous toll, and thankfully, the bottom line is Ricky Pearsall is still healthy, and he's still with us, and he's able to play in the NFL, and again, he is alive. That is the most important thing. But unfortunately, that was not the only off-the-field thing that happened to the 49ers this year that tremendously impacted the team. Unfortunately, Charvarius Ward had a child pass away that was under 2 years old back in October. And again, that is a tragedy. It's not a normal 49er season where you just have a couple of guys go down and you can just say, we'll get them next year. That is a true tragedy, and my thoughts and prayers go out to Charvarius Ward's family, because that is a family that will forever be affected by this. Not only that, Trent Williams and his wife recently announced that they had a stillborn child. So we are talking about a team and an organization that has had one of the most traumatic seasons you can possibly have So forget football for a minute, this has been a downright traumatic couple of months. This isn't a normal couple of guys getting hurt and, oh man, if our star player doesn't get hurt, maybe we can make a run and maybe we can play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this year in the Super Bowl. This is real life. These are real incidents that have happened to players within the San Francisco 49ers organization. So when you factor all of these things, now getting back into football, I really think the 49ers are going to try and run it back, and I really think they are going to try and run it back with a similar roster to what they had in 2023 and run it back in 2025 in what will be the final year in Brock Purdy's rookie contract before Brock really gets paid and really complicates a lot of things financially for San Francisco. And when thinking about 2025, the outlook for the NFC looks a lot different than what it did just a year ago in 2023. And obviously there's a whole offseason to think about what the NFC will look like next year, but thinking out loud for a minute, Detroit will still probably be very good, and they nearly beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game last year. Green Bay is still the youngest offense in the NFL, and I would imagine they're only going to get better, and they will too be a viable opponent. We've seen what Kevin O'Connell has done with Sam Darnold in 2024, and I would imagine the Vikings will still be a very good team in 2025, and remember, they are 30-16 since O'Connell took over all the way back in 2022, and 6 of those losses can be attributed to Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall, and Josh Dobbs, so they've been a very good team over the past couple of years. And my point here is the NFC is going to be very, very difficult to go through for San Francisco, much less a team that's running it back from a couple of years ago that will have a 37-year-old Trent Williams, a 32-year-old George Kittle, and an overall aging roster, and especially the wild card of the team, Christian McCaffrey. The NFC West is also steadily improving, and I think the Cardinals will be a very, very good team next year. And I think their long-term plan is to be similar to what Detroit is, where we are going to kick your rear end and take names later, and we've seen the Cardinals implement throughout the 2024 season, and they too will be a thorn in San Francisco's side. You can never count out a Sean McVay coach team either, and I also really like Mike McDonald and what he's building in Seattle. So I don't want there to be this just assumed belief that the 49ers are going to be back because everybody will presumably be healthier than they have been in 2024 and have the impact of the 2024 draft class, and that the 49ers will be seriously competing again. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? If I had to guess a year out, yes, because they are a really talented team and they have superstars seemingly everywhere on the roster. But again, I don't want it to be just an assumption that they're going to be in the NFC Championship game for what would be the 5th time in 7 years at that point. One other reason I think the 49ers will go all in this offseason is they have a little more cap space than you may think, despite paying, well, nearly everybody. They have around $49 million, and this is per overthecap.com, and if they designate Javon Hargrave as a post-June 1st cut, which they probably will given that he is coming off of a major injury, and given that he is north of 32 years old at this point, they will save $20 million, and they will also save an additional $8 million if they designate pass rusher Yetur Gross-Matos as a post-June 1st cut too. So having those additional $28 million would put them around $77 million, and that could put them in a position to sign a premium free agent, and that would go a long way. They will, of course, have to pay Brock Purdy in a year, as he is entering the final year of his deal now, and the way that they will probably structure that contract is they will probably backload it, or at least give him one really big year in 2026, and then really just kind of offload everything. That way they're not financially strapped in 2027, and they are going to pay Brock Purdy because let's call it what it is. He is a really talented quarterback, and if some of these other guys are getting paid $200 million, then Brock Purdy will absolutely get paid $200 million. I think Brock is an underrated player, or underappreciated player, and I think people legitimately think that he is a product of the system, and unfortunately the numbers haven't really been there for Brock this year the way you'd like, but a lot of players around him have went down, and like we said, it's been a very bad year for San Francisco all around. But when push comes to shove, they are absolutely going to pay Brock Purdy, and I think everybody knows that he's going to get a $200+ million contract relatively soon. So before you pay Brock Purdy, why not go all in one more year? Why not go all in and run it back with the gang one more time and have George Kittle and Trent Williams and everybody else, and Brandon Ayuk and Debo and Christian McCaffrey and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and everybody else, and hopefully Dre Greenlaw would come back too, and Talanoa Hufanga for that matter as well, and why not give it one more shot? You know, once Brock gets paid $50+ million instead of the $1 million that he's getting now, it's going to complicate a lot of things, and there's going to be a lot of cap casualties or a lot of big trades revolving the big name players they have. So why not go all in and try and make it one more run? The 49ers that we are seeing on the field right now look stressed, they look tired, they don't look like the same 49ers we all know, and for good reason. And for reference, Kyle Shanahan does not look good in the sidelines when they pan over to him, and you can tell the 2024 season has, rightfully so, taken an extreme toll on Kyle Shanahan. And I think the 49ers are going to run it back one more time, especially while they have Brock on a cheap deal, because as everyone knows, the money is going to come for Brock Purdy, and that's going to push some guys inevitably out the door. I would be surprised if they won the Super Bowl next year running it back again, but more power to them for trying to run it back, and with the addition of what will probably be one more big free agent. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 42% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.